Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anatomy of an Adaptation. This is a podcast that aims to compare and contrast classic novels with their cinematic adaptations. I'm your host, Nicolo Grasso, and I'm joined today once again by the host of the Uncut Gems podcast, the writer of FlashOnFilm.com, and of course, my number one favorite Stephen King fan, Jakub Flash. How are you doing, Jakub?
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor and a privilege. So
Yeah,
looking forward to this. Pumped.
I'm
I've got stacks of books with me, dude.
You have probably the most insane amount of research surrounding you for any of these episodes that I have seen. So I'm very happy to have you here on board to talk once again about Stephen King. We had a conversation a few months ago talking about Salem's Lot, which was
Hmm.
plenty of fun. And then I just thought, you know what? There's still a couple other Stephen King adaptations. I just recorded one with the good Chris Santon talking about Life of Chuck.
And I wasn't
Now,
there.
and you weren't there, unfortunately, but you're here now for another September released Stephen King adaptation. That's also a fun coincidence that in Europe we've had both of those pretty much around the same time. Because today,
Hmm.
of course, we're talking about The Long Walk, 1979 book by Stephen King, aka Richard Bachman, and the 2025 film by Francis Lawrence.
I like you. But if you fall over, I won't pick you up.
We're all in this together, right? There's no harm in keeping each other amused.
But you know what? I take it back. They say you shouldn't make friends on a long walk, but fuck it, I sort of like you three. Even you, Olsen.
Fuck off.
No, I'm serious. Hey. A short friendship is better than no friendship, right?
That's what I've been saying,
That's
man.
what I'm just saying. Come on, man. Let's be musketeers.
How the fuck are we gonna be musketeers? There's four of us.
Come on now. We stick together to where all that's left. How about that? All for one.
One for all.
Nah, and again, I need to hear it louder. All for one.
And
One for all.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man, you know.
Yeah, not.
Before we actually delve into the book itself, I'm just curious, how do you feel about Richard Bachman? And I'm asking because I've read at this point two of his books. I've also read Rage. And in the beginning of the copy of The Long Walk that I read, there was this very fun uh, prologue, introductory chapter by
The
Stephen
essay,
King
Why
called
I
The
Was
Importance
Bachman.
of Being Bachman. Yes,
Yep.
indeed. How do you feel about Richard Bachman? Like, what are your thoughts on this, like, second personality kind of the Stephen King created to distance himself from some of his other writing?
See, this is a longer story. I mean, I like
The
when
abridged
I
version, then.
so the abridged version is I think there are two ways to look at him, because in a way there's like a historical background to why he did what he did, and there's his opinion, and then there's what it reads like, and at the same time there's also, because he wrote, I want to say, six books under the pen name: Rage, The Long Walk, Roadwork, The Running Man, Thin Air, and The Regulators. And the regulators, the regulators, he essentially just wrote almost like out, like, because he made, like, he killed his pen name after
Mhm.
Thinner, and then he resurrected him to make this sort of appearance as, I don't know if you've ever read The Regulators or Desperation. That
Neither of those.
So Desperation is a book that he wrote in, I want to say, like mid 90s, and it's sort of like, it's kind of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre slash Nothing But Trouble. You know, like this sort of like guy stranded in the middle of nowhere gets harassed by a local sheriff, and then turns out there's like wild shit happening in this town. And the regulators is kind of like a through the looking glass side of the same predicament. Like, it takes place in the same universe with the same sort of, but, well, not all of them, the characters, but some of these characters like are sort of reflected in there, but it's different, and it makes sense that
Okay.
you'd say, like, one's from Bachman's point of view, one's from King's point of view. So that's kind of like a fun experiment. But in the beginning, it was like completely different. So when I read, I think I want to say I was like 21 when I read The Long Walk.
Oh
Um,
wow, okay. Probably the
uh,
right age to read it for the first time.
oh yeah, yeah. I really loved it, by the way. But the idea of like Bachman, I didn't quite this didn't quite click with me. The idea of like why would he write under a pseudonym? Like what's going on? And the only reason I could name was that these books were different in terms of they weren't horrors, because when I was coming to like at the age of 21, so when I was going through my teens, like binging through his horrors, like Stephen King was a genre guide to me,
Mhm.
and Bachman was like an author. He like I didn't know any better, right? I didn't have access to the internet either. Like let's just say, like I was 21 when internet was like people had homepages, you know. um,
Different
and
times.
Comic Sans was a font of choice for many of them. Um, I'm dating myself now, but you know, like the idea was that this pseudonym gave him the opportunity to depart the genre, which I don't think it's true, and I think he doesn't think it's true,
Mm,
because initially, like the like the the reason for him to develop this pen name was essentially a result of Doubleday telling him that the market's saturated with his work, because he's famously extremely prolific. Like the fucker takes 90 days to write a book, you know. And then there were times when he would be publishing like one book a year or more, you know.
That's yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, like
Still does in a way. Actually, I think
yeah, he
like
like
every
he
year there's
will
at least one
publish
book.
one novel a year, and then like maybe sometimes he will publish a novel and then he would then pull some of his short stories together. um Meanwhile, these were different. But there's a distinction to be made, because the Long Walk and Rage are different to Road Work and The Running Man, the first four, right? Because these were books that he wrote when he was like 18, and he tried to publish them, but no one wanted them. So he put them in a box and then revisited them after he became a famous writer. And he goes like,
Hmm.
I have these books, and so I can just go and finish them or rewrite them or do whatever. And then they invented this pseudonym with his editor, as in he went from Doubleday to the National American Library, and he found this editor called Elaine Coster, and he told her, look, I've got this book, and it was Rage. It was like, and guys at Doubleday said no, because like there's so many King books out there, and she was like, what if we just publish this under a pen name and see whether this could live on its own terms, you know? And then so that was the mercantile reason for why this happens, right? And the other one was like this of the Beatles slash Elvis Presley. So like, what if I wrote a book, like the guy's like really on top of this, like on top of the world, like like I don't want to give him like all of the credit, because he's a bit of a genius, and but then again at the same time, I mean we could get into it later, but he had an agent whose name now escapes me. I think his surname was Macaulay, who was a big name in genre space, like sci-fi and horror and fantasy, and he represented and he struck deals with a lot of really good writers. Like George R. R. Martin was represented by him at some point. And so him and King and few other genre folks essentially became big in the 80s, because partly because they had a fucking rock star agent. so
Very
so
different times from today in the way the
yeah.
world works with
So
literacy.
yeah, like this guy kind of just like releases these two books because he had them stashed essentially in a box, and they like lived and died as $1.50 paperbacks. And only after it came out that like the secret was out. Like he had to go and admit in public, because some people, like I think I can't remember what the newspaper was. They asked him for comment because they were going to run a story about how they know they have proof that Bachman and King are the same person. And then he
And
goes
he's
like,
just like showing the books and being like, they read exactly the same, my man.
yeah.
It's
So yeah, like I found him like initially that this was a kind of departure from horror to something else, because these books are not horrors apart from Thinner, which is kind of like I don't necessarily understand the reason why he chose to write it under a pen name, but that's kind of how I saw it in the beginning, and now I see this as kind of like a with the book we're talking about today, almost like a look into the past because you can see the craft of a kid who can't stop himself from typing, right?
Hmm.
And you can see that this his books are raw, they're flawed, and they're edgy, like so edgy,
Yes.
and like a 19-year-old would be edgy, but they also have like this, like you watch an early Stanley Kubrick film, and like this film's kind of shit, but you can see the genius in it.
He's
you
going
know,
places. Yeah. Yeah.
this kid's going places. Like you watch Fear and Desire, this kid's going places. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of how I like. I'm not sure if I answered your question because like I famously now at this point I can ramble. So sorry,
No,
but
no,
yeah,
no.
that's kind
Don't
of where I
apologize.
was.
It's. I think it's a needed introduction because, of course, everyone knows Stephen King. We've talked about Stephen King plenty of times already on this podcast. So to actually do a Richard Bachman mini introduction, especially considering that we're going to be talking about Running Man as well. Spoiler for a future episode later this year. Um, it's something that fascinated me as well because I'd actually read Rage. I'm trying to do what you're doing as well of like reading Stephen King in order. Of
Mhm.
course, I have to, anticipate Running Man because of because of the recording. But everything else I've been able to now read through, and of course, I read Rage, which I liked more than I expected. And I totally see what you mean about, the Richard Bachman persona being just an excuse to revisit older works, revamping them maybe, but yeah, showing the rawer side of his writing, of his even personality at the time. It has that edginess that you mentioned, that darkness, but like depressive darkness
Mhm.
that I don't necessarily associate with King's later work. Outside of some exceptions, and I've of course I've not read everything from him. Far from it. You've read way more than I have. But I would never consider him particularly depressive. I think he's dark. I think he goes to dark places. But I always feel like he leaves you with some semblance of hope in one way or another.
That's
He
fair. Yeah.
likes he likes a nice tidy bow, maybe to a fault sometimes.
Oh no,
Um,
like I think he's the opposite. Almost like he goes like, "Shit, I need to finish this,"
and
because
Deus Ex Machina, just like that.
he's like a world-renowned pantser. Like he will just let the characters go where they. That's like, he's one of the reasons why I don't think I've ever finished like a longer piece of writing because I've always kept like and I now I promise myself I think I'm going to change this in my own life, right?
Okay.
Because you just like start with an idea and just let the characters just go where they need to go and just nurture them along the way. But he's also a freak of nature, so he can just do it in under 3 months and produce 600 pages. And he goes like. That at some point he goes like, well, I suppose we need to finish this somehow. So like, how about let's just I don't know, burn the house or whatever. you know, that's why his like he famously just has a problem sticking the landings on his books, right? Like they're just like coming out of nowhere, or they just go way over the top, or they're like weirdly subdued. They just don't feel like they're organic because at some point he goes like, I think that's enough of it, thanks, and he just needs to finish it, right?
Yes, yes. It's very much it's about the journey, not the destination type of guy.
Yeah.
Which is very funny considering what we're talking about today. Because the long walk is about I think that's again, let's start from that actually. I think this is gonna be kind of like a very messy conversation because it is kind of a messy story in a way, but I like that about it. And it is funny that it's one of very few stories that King wrote where the ending is inevitable. You have 100 kids, teenagers, that take part in this long walk. It's a dystopic future, and only one can survive. They cannot go below a certain speed, otherwise they get a warning. After 3 warnings, they get their ticket. They get achoo, shot in the head on the spot, and only one can survive. And so, as the book goes on, the more kids died, it's like inevitable where it's going to end up,
Hmm.
of course. So I like that premise in it. But like generally speaking, like to say my feelings about the book, I liked it more than I expected. I liked it more than I did Rage
Hmm.
for a Bachman novel. I found it to be really oppressive in parts and also very weirdly long-winded in others. Every time we are with these teenagers in the long walk, talking to each other, bonding, I think it's really effective. There's some like set pieces, sequences that were really troubling and disturbing to read through. And then he just ends up talking about like their past, and he goes into their memories and like they're daydreaming, and they think about their girlfriends, and they think about when they were children. And I could leave all of that, you know um
Hmm.
it kind of slogs the book down. It's a long book for what it is. I think it's like over 300 pages, 330 pages. It is the kind of book that feels like if it were 200, 250 tops, it would be probably excellent or close to it. But again, he wrote this when he was 19. I think compared to Rage, he barely rewrote this and like updated it before
Hmm.
publication, I feel like. Um, what are your thoughts on The Long Walk?
I think this is an underrated classic.
Oh.
I'll put it that way
Is it
because it
nostalgia talking, maybe, or no?
it oh yeah, definitely. But for me, this is kind of like, well, like you're getting a guy on the show who's like, like if I could wear a Stephen King T-shirt, I'd wear it on unironically, you know. So you kind of have to take me with a grain of salt because like at this point I think I may be on his payroll. So
That'd be nice. Like a promoter,
um
Stephen King promoter, just spreading the good word around the
yeah,
world.
because he is my favorite living author. Like it's so it's and he has always been like very close like to my heart, and it has been my like was my sort of gateway drug to call it adult fiction and genre fiction at that too. But I wrote this at a time when I was able to like sympathize with the characters because they were kind of sort of my age too. And to me, like when I read it first, and then this kind of really reverberated on the sort of like on the back of not knowing what the adulthood's gonna be like what is life, like, and this is kind of like, and this is how a 19-year-old mind would probably process these things of just like, what's the point, you know? And now being 41 years of age, and knowing that like what the context of how this book came together looked like, it just gives me more sort of context because there's more themes sort of in it, and you can see how edgy it is as well, like how like you call them these like long-winded of like, why is it here passages of like talking about someone's family or someone just someone accidentally killing somebody,
Hmm.
and why is it needed? And like
Their
I
horny feelings.
understand, yeah, I understand why it's there because it's supposed to be an episodic odyssey. It's supposed to be, I mean, and this is one of those like Nirvana didn't know all the chords, but they kind of, but it sounded right. So because this guy is 19, he's a college freshman, so I suppose he knows a few things about story structure and what he wants to do um, with it. And at this point, I don't know. I haven't seen like the first draft of what was in his drawer, and then what he turned it into when in 1979. And this book was released like a month ahead of the Dead Zone, by the way, right?
Which I'm also
Um,
reading right now. Very good. Very, very good.
yeah. So um, it's it's I see it has its place. Like this book is not supposed to be like what I call a toilet read, where it's just like in and out. It's a good story. It keeps you going. No, it's supposed to be one of those that actually um, like makes you pause for a second. So it's supposed to feel languid, and I don't mind that it feels languid. It's not like a 380 pages or 350 pages that feels like 100. No, it feels exactly like 100 380 pages, right?
Yes.
It feels uh, well, it doesn't really like there are some books that are 140 pages that feel like 1,000, right? It doesn't feel like that, but it earns its keep because you kind of follow at the pace of the characters. And it also helps that they physically walk. So as you go along on this journey with them, you learn more about them, and you learn more about those that tend to survive for longer.
Mhm.
So you develop a relationship with them, and so the longer you go along on this journey, the harder it gets when they get a bullet to the face, or when they get their ticket,
Yeah.
as the major says, right? So I think that's kind of how I like why I like to call it an underrated classic, because this book is way smarter and way than I think people gave it credit for. And at this point, like, critics of all sorts, you can almost just like kind of just give them like a polite smile, because like you read reviews from the time when these books were published as Richard Bachman, and people will be like, this is dog shit, or this book is written exceptionally well, like we should call this guy Stephen King and show him how books are written, you know. I just feel I have no idea what they're talking about. So
It's very
um
telling.
so yeah, like I feel like this has been kind of sort of for a very long while, almost like a forgotten, underrated classic, because it's kind of one of those books that's now, I think it, for a very long while it was out of circulation as a standalone release, because when The Secret came out, I think some booksellers just bought out all the stocks of their sort of standalone releases, and they were just gone, out of
Mhm.
print. And then only the Bachman books sort of released in mid 80s, and then I think they're, well, now they're in circulation, because I think when Doubleday lost their rights to it or something like this, or maybe not Doubleday. I think there were some rights issues over who gets to publish these, and then now
Yeah.
now they're just abundant, so you can get Bachman books, I think, and The Long Walk as standalone as well, as a standalone release. But yeah, for a while they were kind of difficult to get a hold of, because of, you know, they flew off they were released in very small prints, and they, when The Secret came out, they were just disappeared, because all of a sudden the fans were like, holy shit, we need to get them, you know. So so it's kind of like, well, but I really love this book. It's a fascinating piece to talk about.
Yeah,
Like,
which, like what you're saying makes sense because I genuinely can't remember the first time I heard someone talk about this book outside of like when the movie was announced, right?
mhm,
And even in rankings, in like the best Stephen King books and like books I recommend, like it's I've never seen it mentioned. Which is a shame because it has the elements of a classic King story, as you mentioned. I think
mhm,
just for me, especially like a classic King, has to have an intriguing premise, and just the premise of this
mhm.
is it's a great hook. Like there's
Yep.
no two ways about it. It's like, oh, teenagers have to go on this long walk until only one survives, and that's it. Um, and the way he manages to maintain the pace of this walk, the cold I like there's so many little things, like I love the way he constantly repeats certain lines, like the walk goes on, they keep on walking, it's just like every once in a while, like something horrific happens, they keep walking. It's just like boom boom,
Mhm,
it just goes on and on. The coldness of the soldiers that are always on the sides, always keeping an eye on them, making sure they're going at the right pace, they're not slowing down. Warning, warning 47, warning.
mhm,
Just it creates this very oppressive atmosphere that of course, like, obviously King has talked about it, the book has multiple reminders, like the connections to the Vietnam War,
mhm,
to teenagers being listed in the army, to draft, to all those things. But also, it kind of fits with just the political feelings outside of like what was happening with Vietnam, just like what it felt like to live in the States at the time, where people were just like endlessly marching towards something they don't really know about. And it's not only about the people who are marching. One thing that I really liked about the book, that we'll talk about in the film, it's actually very underplayed there, is that there are multiple instances of meeting other people, passers-by, audience, however you want to call them, just like people looking on at the march, rooting them on,
mhm,
cheering or being disgusted by it. it feels very almost epic in a way,
Mhm.
right? Like going through multiple states and all that. How do you feel about these elements?
The See, that's something that actually gives, like, fleshes out this, let's just call it the central theme of the book, which I
Hmm.
think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, like, this book is an allegory for the Vietnam War and essentially a waste of young lives. That's what it's supposed to be.
Just the pointlessness, the futility of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, well, and the idea of, like, these kids signing up to go to war, for instance, like kids, like you trust 18-year-olds with assault rifles. In America, they can't buy beer until they're like 21, right? So what a fun country to be in. Um, but the idea of, like, these kids going to, like, essentially sign their lives away on under the sort of, not promise, but the small chance, like a 1% chance, because there's 100 of them, that they can come back, they will come back out alive, right? With that comes the promise of just your dreams coming true, because you get to have whatever you want.
Hmm.
That's, like, it's not the rewards, like, tangible. It's like, oh, it's $1 million. No, it's whatever you want. You know, and I feel like this idea of, like, how in the book there's this kind of, it's kind of laid out almost as like, it's kind of like the Hunger Games meets Speed. Like, the you can't slow down below certain threshold, and at the same time, it's kind of like battle royale.
Like a
You know,
free
where
for all, yeah, of young people.
so the last man standing wins, right? Uh, it's like I mean, I could see why this book has been adapted to film now, because now we have Squid Game, and the Hunger Games is a massive franchise, so it's now like there's a market for it. Meanwhile, in the late 70s or mid 70s, the guy was, like, pushed back on this and said, like, well, there's no market for dystopians. It's fantasy. Go away.
Should be like they shoot horses, don't they? Just came out. It's just
But no, it's it's a different time, right? But
yeah.
that's kind of how I feel like there's it's almost like a reflection of the mood in the country, and at the same, like, I can see how you could, like, the guy writes it in like 67, 68,
Yeah, yeah,
so that
yeah, yeah.
would have been at the height of Vietnam protests, civil rights movement, and then he reworks it and republishes it in late 70s, which is post Nixon, right? So America's not in a great place either, right? Like, so there's, like, these oil crises, everything's just gone to shit, and it shows. And at the same time, you can sort of read into it as this is kind of like a very right wing dystopia, where you have essentially, like, this military, well, you could say the avatar for right wing American government. And let's just be honest, the American government never had the opportunity to be left wing, because even what they call left is still hard right as far as Europeans are concerned. Um,
As far as democracy and
yeah, the
anti-violence, yeah.
American Democrats would classify among European parties as far right. um, but what do I know? But the idea of people being involved in this, as in, like, some people cheer, some people are disgusted by it, essentially also reflects the societal divisions in the country, or how some people think like, you can't say what you think, because like, you'll be taken to, like, into the squads. It's almost like it's taking place on the periphery of what you'd see in, like, The Handmaid's Tale,
Yeah.
where you have these uber right wingers. It's just you don't see the religious side of it, right? Where, like, in Margaret Atwood, it was all about Christian far right, right? And here you don't see the Christian part of it, but you see like,
The
love your
military
country sort
industrial
of.
complex and
Yeah, like, there's this, like, the character of the major is essentially, like, I want to say, when I read the book, every single time I imagine this guy looks like Douglas MacArthur, his fucking corncob pipe with his aviator glasses. He looks like MacArthur, who was like I think he was the original BMF, bad
yep.
motherfucker,
Yeah, yeah,
right? But you can see that he would have been the kind of character who was almost like a poster child for Uncle Sam wants you, kind of right wing ideology,
yeah.
and that shows in here. It's just the reason I like it is because it's not like it's not really heavy-handed in a way. It's just there because it's underneath what drives the story, and what drives the story is a sort of a developing relationship between people, between people who are put in the same predicament. They form this sort of the camaraderie, the way drafted boys would do when they are sent to fight wars on other people's behalf, and they just and their ideology of like, well, I'm gonna go and win this, just meets the road of, well, how about we just survive today, you know? And they, as they like, go on patrols in the jungle, and you can dispute and discuss this of the validity of the war and whatever, and it's all fine. As far as from the soldier's point of view, it quickly becomes a matter of, I want to survive today, and I want my buddies to my left and to my right to survive with me,
Mhm.
and that's it. And they and soon, like after a week or two after their deployment starts, it's just the politics go out the window. It's all about just making it back home, making it out alive, and seeing your friends torn to shreds, and seeing like maybe tomorrow it will be me, but not tonight. Tonight I get to go to sleep, and hopefully I'm gonna wake up because no one's gonna ambush us in at night and disembowel everyone, because that would happen.
Yes.
That's kind of how this book kind of functions on these two levels. There's this sort of relationship, which is something that King has always been very exceptionally good at, and the idea of, here's this sort of like this literary undertone of like, well, here's your Vietnam War, here's the societal divide, the left, the right, the whatever, the civil rights movement. All these allegories are there, but they function kind of in, not in isolation, but they're kind of, you can see that there's a layer cake in here. There's a relationship layer and there's the metaphorical layer, and they kind of just go side by, and you get to have time to experience all these thoughts, and because this movie proceeds at the pace of a walking human. So
Very
that's
a
kind
very
of how it
slow
works.
walking human.
Yeah. Well, 4
uh,
miles an hour is not a very slow walk, really.
well, they're not running in a way.
It's like 6 kilometers an hour, so it's a good pace.
Um, I and also I to add to what you were saying, which I completely agree with. I'm very surprised going into it, only knowing the premise. I'm very surprised how much King actually plays into the humanity of these teenagers.
Hmm.
And I think because I just came preconditioned with all of those that you mentioned, like their battle royales, their Squid Games, your Hunger Games, whatever, all those like one for all, free for all. Sorry, fights for survival. In here, especially for the first act of the book, I think it's like, was it like three parts, right?
Hmm.
In the book, I think for the first part, especially before we get to the first death and just this escalation of violence, you really do feel that it's just like people hanging out almost. It's like, oh yeah, we're doing this walk. It's exciting. It's fun. It's a bit
It's an
thrilling.
adventure.
It's an
Like, we're going to
adventure.
war, guys. Everyone's wearing green,
It's all good. It's all good. And they all know what's gonna happen because they've all seen it before.
Well, they know. Well, there's knowing because you've seen it, and there's knowing and being a part of it.
Yes, it's one of those things that I mean, it's not maybe intentional at the time, but especially considering where we've come now, the detachment that we have, in a post CNN news, like 24-hour news cycle, constant barrage of violence and war and whatever on social media, on TV, on the radio, it becomes unreal. You see it so much. And especially now,
Mhm.
it's so much clearer than back then when they only had like 60 millimeter newsreel footage from Vietnam or wherever, Cambodia. To actually experience it firsthand is something different. And that's the moment where the tone shifts, everything kind of changes in them, where it's like, oh shit, this is real. And you're gonna get your ticket. That actually means you're gonna get shot in the head. And who's the one who gets the ticket first? One of the youngest of the group who just has this leg cramp, like a Charlie horse, which I'd never heard before in my life. So
You had to Google and say, "What's a Charlie horse?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a cramp." Okay,
it's a
good.
cramp. It's a cramp. Yeah, yeah. It's like, what the fuck? Um, and it's horrible. And also the fact that the rules are strict. They are what they are, and everyone is trying to help this poor kid. Everyone is trying to, not everyone, but like multiple people. Garrity, the protagonist, is trying to help him. Um, they band together. They try yelling at the soldiers, just let him go. Just like the crap, it's fine. Like this isn't like a true problem. Like it's fine. He can get better. I don't know. It was just very effective. I just wish I cared more about the actual backstories of some of these people. I
Well,
think that's when it gets into the negative for me, where it's just like you mentioned that. I do appreciate what you said about
Mhm.
kind of getting lost into these characters, getting acquainted with them, who they are, also building the world, but in a way that feels more organic than forced. You never really get a clear sense of how this world really works compared to our own or the contemporary one when he wrote it. But that's, yeah, it gets into so much talk about like boys wanting girls and school and family. That's not that compelling to me. Like those are the moments where like my eyes almost like start reading through the page. It's like, ah, fuck, okay, yes, we're still here. It's like kind of, you have to get through this to get to the, I don't want to say the good stuff, because it's not like I'm here exclusively for the thrill of the walk. But I
Mhm.
think that's when King's young writing truly shines.
I think there's something to be said in here, and again, like fully appreciate that this may have been just a happy accident, right? And actually
Mhm.
goes to show that, say, like the reason why, I mean, I don't want to go on a tangent of why, like, because the guy decided to write these books as Richard Bachman, and they didn't become a success until someone told everyone he was king, and all of a sudden, like, from 28,000 they started saying 280, right? Um, which is kind of like, oh, if I
Instant
wrote this book
revaluation.
instead, would if he had to start over and like not have everyone know who he was, would he be able to become a success? Not with every book, right? It would have like, it had to be Carrie. It had to be Carrie that Tabitha King fished out of the bin that and asked him to finish. It had to be Carrie. Everything else, everything starts with that, because but going back to it, like, I appreciate the idea that, say, you don't learn anything about this world apart from tangential information from half snippets of conversation, right? There are these squads. There's some kind of, which means, like, oh, are these like death squads? What's going on? Like, oh, there's this sort of idea of like penal colonies. Like, what's going on in this country? Like, no one goes like, in 2027, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
far right government takes over and whatever, and and it positions everything in time and space so that you like it would function as fantasy,
Mhm.
right? As dystopian fantasy. And that's something like, well, I'm currently, as we were recording this, I'm kind of conceptualizing this like a little essay on adaptations of The Stand, and for my own little journey of rereading and filling the blanks, or in my own King journey, like more or less chronologically. I did have to speed up my Life of Chuck because it just came out like a month ago, so it just broke the cycle. Um, and the monkey broke the cycle. This year we've been blessed with King stuff.
We had like four
All
or
hail the
five.
King.
All hail the king. Yeah.
Um, but you don't get this sort of um, like exposition to anything, right? What you get is what I call backdoor fantasy, as in, like, this fantasy sneaks in on you, sneaks up on you, sneaks into the narrative, and you can completely ignore it, and you'll be fine. But at the same time, like, all these elements of these backstories, they sneak up on you, and the way, and I think, like, because he just like introduces characters and starts musing about, like, what is this guy like? Like, I bet he misses his mom, so he's gonna talk about his mom. You know, and then if you think about it, it's like, what would you want these characters to be? Like, all exceptional? Like, no, this is like in a bell curve of people. Like, imagine this of like all like loads and loads of people apply for this, knowing that they probably won't get it because only 100 people every year get it. So they just apply, hoping that they probably won't, right? They won't win because it's unlikely that you'll get picked, right? But then if you do, then there's gonna be a spectrum of most people being having just average lives,
Mhm.
and this one guy being kind of like special in that his father, he has a reason to be there, right? Because he has history like, has family history of this sort of opposing this or defying this government. There are some of these people who shouldn't be there because they actively work against the group, and there are just normal people. The bulk of them are just guys, and most of them you don't even hear about. You'll see like, I've heard number 17 bought a ticket, you know, or
Hmm.
like another 7 people. We had shots like, who's it's like, oh, it's 27, it's 73, and whatever, right? And you don't even know who they are, and
They're
that's the
just
point.
numbers. They're just
They're just
numbers.
numbers on a page. They're just statistics, right? But some of them you'll be like, again, like the guys, like if you ended up being rounded into a battalion of people who are drafted into to go to fight the Russians or the Chinese or wherever Trump figures out is a good war to fight, right? You'd then find people like this who'd be to cope, to self-regulate their emotional turmoil. They would start sharing about, oh, what are you gonna do when you come back? And you're like, I miss my mom, I miss my dog, I miss my sister. Here's my dad fixing a car. And you're like, these are just not exceptional people. They're just
Normal.
people. And the more you kind of learn about them, the more you start caring about them, even though there is nothing special about what you learn. Right? And even the
Yeah.
funnier bit is like, it's just like sometimes you learn a lot about a person. You feel like I've spent a lot of time like reading about this fucker's backstory, and he just gets his legs blown off like 2 pages in, right? After I've finished reading about that. And that's kind of the point. As in, like, what a waste of time. Yes, it is a waste of time in life that this person has. Like, imagine that you feel like you've wasted 3 minutes of your life, and imagine that there may have been people like this. They've just established this relationship, and now they have to live with the fact that like one of them just died,
Hmm.
right? And somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Vietnam, right? And no one's gonna hear about it apart. And all this will make is a 5 minute piece of reportage on television, and that will
And
serve
that
to
would
either
be.
infuriate or galvanize the masses. That's it.
Hmm.
Your life
Hmm.
is meaningless, and I think, and I suppose that's kind of how this movie. No, I keep saying the movie because we're going to transition, but the book
You
is
can't
kind of
wait. You can't wait.
it's in extremely nihilistic that way.
But there's still a smidge of hope. Like even the fact that they know only one of them will survive. Some of them, like Garrett's little group, still helps each other out. Like
Oh
they're
yeah,
still
there's.
supporting each other. They're still rooting for one another. They're still
Mhm,
loving each other with very unexpected gayness as well,
mhm,
which I was not expecting. Like a lot of that conversation, um, which kind of plays also into what you're talking about. Like some of the homoeroticism that's present in the military here is kind of embraced head on in a couple of
mhm.
passages. Well, more than a couple of passages actually, in multiple parts of the book. Um, but just generally, it is, if you want to even take this out of the specificity of the war context of Vietnam and the futility of war, like if you look at it as just like life being this long walk, there is something beautiful in that. It's just like where we're all going to end, and it's not the finish line. None of us are gonna be that lucky, probably, but we're still gonna try and do the best we can for the one that's next to us in the moment of need. And
Yeah.
they support each other. They crack jokes, try not to basically kill themselves while walking,
Mhm,
um, and make the most of it. And yeah, there's so many of those of the banter that they have and those little moments. And again, like even the people that they meet on the road, there's this passage. I think I wrote to you as well when I got to it, um, with an Italian guy selling like handing watermelons to
mhm.
these to the teenagers and the soldiers shouting at him. It's just like there's like people trying to help people. That passage also made me think of like the Calvary and um, Jesus with the cross, carrying the cross, and the person bathing him and trying to give him water. And
Mhm.
yeah, there's some of that
Yeah.
imagery as well that's called back here.
Yep. Which you could then again call edgy, right? But
Yeah.
the nihilism of this comes in the forms like it's all true. This, like, imagine how sad it is that you find this sort of the camaraderie in this of the brotherhood in this sort of predicament, this extreme predicament of like, well, if we slow down, we buy a ticket, right? We die, right? But you know that this is a zero sum game. We can't all win, We can't, and we make a pact, all the five of us, we help each other, you know? It's just like, well, at the end of it, it's gonna be one of us who wins. Everyone else is gonna die. That's it. So it's a zero-sum game. Everyone else has to lose for me to win,
Mhm.
right? So which makes the whole book extremely nihilistic and depressive, right? Because it shows you that, suppose that's how kind of how it blows. I want to say, with good reason, the metaphor to Vietnam out of proportion, because not just one person came back. Well, there are multiple people would like, if you have like a battalion of 100 people going into Vietnam, some of them would come back, not just one, probably even in some cases, probably most, right? Or maybe none of them would come back. Or maybe the people who come back will be forever changed. You don't know. But the idea is that in here it's literalized, as in like, you don't come out of this. Because even Garrity, who wins, spoiler for the book, you know, he doesn't even know that he wins. He's too far gone. He has no clue. He actually thinks there's a guy in the distance he has to chase. Like, he still
He
thinks
just
there's
keeps
another guy.
walking. Yeah.
So he keeps walking, right? So it's a very sort of ambiguous ending in a way, right? You can kind of read it that way. That's just like he chases this Fata Morgana. That there's this guy also. So I can't be the winner. That I can see in front of me. So so I keep
Because it makes you
walking,
say
right?
like, what's after everything he has experienced, what's the point?
Yeah.
He has won, and now what? Could he ever just be like, yeah, that's it now. I'm gonna go
So
home and enjoy whatever I want, all
again,
the money in the
l-
world.
literalized PTSD,
Yeah.
right? That's exactly what it is. As in, like, how, I've always seen, like, the Lord of the Rings that way, the ending of the
With
Lord of the
Frodo
Rings.
going to the
Frodo going to the whatever. Like, how am I supposed to go back to the Shire? And because, like, in the Shire, for all they cared, nothing like the war for the ring didn't never happen. Like, the
just
worst they got was when Saruman came in there and just started like, it's almost like a right-wing government moved in for a while,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and they had to go and scour it. But the idea was that these guys, like, guys like Frodo, have seen so much shit that they couldn't possibly reintegrate into society, right? And this guy, like, he wins and he goes like, I get to go back home. It's like, who am I gonna like? I have nothing in common with anybody else. I've gone through such hell that I don't know how to talk about, like, growth. Like, what are we having for dinner? And all you see is like flashbacks of people's brains being spilled in front of you because that's all you've experienced.
Yeah, for 5 days, is it like 4 or 5 days, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, of
genuinely
people that
unimaginable.
you've sort of just generated some incredible attachment to, because being stuck in the same predicament and facing the same direction will form a bond between people, whether you like it or not. Like, it forms a very strong bond in the moment.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say, especially among men, but that's kind of what happens. Like, these people pull together. Most of them, like, some of them, like, would be almost like in a bell curve of 100 people. There's going to be one sociopath, and that's Barkovich, right? Like, there's
Yes.
this 1% of people who just want to see, like, say he is in here. What does he say? I'm here to dance on other people's graves, and they immediately peg him as like, this guy. He's dangerous. Don't
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 interact
don't
with him,
interact. Yeah, yeah. The killer. Just yeah.
because he's a psychopath essentially, or a sociopath. I never remember the difference between the two, but
Again, speaking of like king archetypes, there's always that one guy who's like too crazy. What's it? I always forget the guy's name from It as well.
oh Jesus, also forget.
That
But yeah, I know what you mean.
everyone
There's
always,
always one.
yeah, especially when it's like this a big cast of characters. There's always gonna be that one guy who's like completely unhinged and in it for like the blood or whatever, just pure insanity. Um, yeah, no, it is an interesting cast of characters. I do like Garrity as well because especially she spent a lot of time with him, of course, and in his thoughts. But yes, I think this is also a good moment to actually transition into the film as well.
By the way,
Um,
before we do,
please,
how
yes.
did people not figure out this is King? This book takes place in Maine.
There's a lot of talk about Maine and like
Oh, it's
specific
Garrett
cities
is
and towns.
Maine's own. He's the main boy. And they go through all these little towns, and it's just exquisite detail. And apparently, Richard Bachman was born in New York, spent some time in New Hampshire, whatever. Which is made up
with a
like a whole
front.
backstory for him, but this whole thing just stinks of King in terms of like settings and the sort of like the romantic, loving sort of descriptions of these fields of wheat or whatever they, they, they farm in there because it's a farming state, right?
It's almost parodic in that sense,
Yeah,
and it was still early in his writing.
and everyone's like, "Who is this guy, Richard Bachman?" And everyone was like, "How did they not know?"
Hindsight, we probably would have been like, "Oh, he's trying to copy King so much, he's even setting it in Maine." I think
Yeah.
that's always in the back of my mind whenever I like read or watch a horror story now, and it's like the setting is Maine. I'm
Hmm.
like, there you go.
That's a wink to King.
King
But there's
wannabe.
a but between the two, by the way, there's a nice distinction because at the time when he was writing this, which would be like he would be 19, he would be like as like it almost feels like it was like a second persona as well because as a like an 18-year-old kid, he was writing these short stories that he later pulled into like Night Shift. Night Shift was the first volume of short stories he did, but they were all pulled out of um like there were extremely sort of old stories even at that point, like the stuff that he wrote when he was like 15, right? And he would sell them to like tits and ass magazines like Hustler and Playboy,
And penny magazines, yeah, yeah.
Cavalier and whatnot, right? And he would then pull them all to in like so when he was writing this, so Stephen King would have been the sort of the persona he would assume almost when he's writing these sort of rag stories, about like I don't know, haunted ironing press and whatnot, right? Meanwhile, this was something that he actually put some thought into. Like these are books that are trying to say something, right? And I think that it's not like accidental that this book says something about something.
Hmm.
Be- It also starts with this what if scenario because I think he was fascinated by the ideas of like the Kennedys walkathons in 1960s. There were these ideas of like Kennedy would have been like propagating before he died, I suppose. The idea of like walkathons, like you have to walk and whatever. And he goes like, what if you couldn't stop and you bought a ticket if you stopped, you know? And that's kind of how you spin this into this king-like idea of a what if scenario that just like, bends your reality slightly, but in contrast to other genre stuff that he would end up really making a career out of, this stays kind of firmly in, call it a reality. Like there's no supernatural element in here whatsoever, right?
No, no, in barely any context, like we talked about.
But yeah, so yeah, but yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to quickly just add before you take us into the movie.
No, no, no. Good. It's a good point to talk about. Um, but yeah, no, the movie was actually a fair bit in development, longer than I thought. To the point that actually George Romero was originally attached to direct
Mhm.
this around the 80s and 90s. Then it was dropped. Then it was picked up from Frank Darabont, who of course directed The Mist and a couple of other King adaptations. Also, that was dropped until
Shawshank
finally
Redemption, The
Shawshank
Green Mile.
Redemption. Until we got to this point where we actually have it directed by Francis Lawrence, written by J.T. Molnar, the same guy who made Stranger Darling, which I still have not seen, but I've heard mixed things about. Um, and starring Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson, Garrett Warning, Charlie Plummer, Ben Wang, Mark Hamill, and Judy Greer. What are your thoughts, Jakub, on the Long Walk, the movie, after like 46 years since the book was
46
first
years in the
published?
making. This movie is not good. uh,
Ouch.
I don't know. I mean, it's all right. As in, like, see, my King show goes like, yeah, like I'm glad this book got adapted into something like with all like, and I've seen all of the sequels to the Children of the Corn franchise. Like this point, right? I've seen so many bad horrors, and I've seen Trucks, okay, and Lawnmower Man too. So there's a yeah, it it's not as bad as some of them, but it's not good, right? And I think there's simple reason is like, well, things like this book has been in development, this movie's been developed in so many times. Like kept spending like so I spent so much time just saying movie when I meant the book, and I'm gonna do it the opposite way.
Yep, yeah, yeah.
Stupid. But this book has been has been kind of like on someone's desk for so many years. This movie's been in development for decades now, right? And I think the reason why it was like that was because it's not exactly adaptable. It's not like it's an unfilmable book. Like it's not like Cloud Atlas, you know. It's not like Against the Day or Infinite Jest, where it's like knock yourself out. Try that shit.
You
You
see, in
know?
2 years where you cancel the project.
It's kind of unadaptable the way like oh not the way like Blood Meridian's unadaptable in a similar way, as in like you can't make a movie that makes money out of this,
Or
you know?
that's like a movie, like a cohesive 2 hour
Yeah,
Blood
cohesive 2 hours
Meridian
that also
adaptation.
will not alienate the audience whose dollars it requires, you know? And also at the same time wouldn't I mean this book probably has less of a following that Blood Meridian does, because like if you make Blood Meridian Cormac McCarthy's arguable masterpiece and really go cheap on the violence, people will riot, right?
John Hill
Because this
Code
book
will talk about it.
requires this movie requires to be reprehensibly violent. Like I don't want to say it like just just a notch down from a Serbian film violent, you know? The book is unspeakably gruesome and horrible, and it's supposed to be like that. And it also feels like a biblical sort of like a book of revelations almost, right?
A hellscape, a genuine hellscape.
Yeah. For a reason, right? In here it's slightly different because it's like no one's gonna riot. King fans will go like, "Oh god." Anyway, look, I'm glad it's there. Let's go back and read the book. I think King fans are a little bit different. And this book is has not does not have like a cult following the way like The Shining does, right? Or um
Even some lesser works, to be honest. Like, I don't think it has had the opportunity to even be harboring a cult
yeah.
over
But
46 years.
I feel like the idea is like the book has this sort of like just to the mechanics of experiencing these two different modalities of whatever, right? Like you read a book, it will take you days. This book will probably take you like a week or two, right? If you, I don't know, read 200 pages a week, which is, I don't know, like I find for me this is like a nice space when you just do other things and you have like half hour before bed, a few toilet sessions, and maybe like 30 minutes in the afternoon.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
probably like what you're gonna end up reading as a human being who has a family and stuff to do, right? 200 pages a
Person
week.
in
That's
my
probably
life.
good average, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it will take you like a week and a half, right? Now that's and you're going to in this time you're going to spend time with these characters. You're going to walk with them for a week and a bit, right? And the repetitiveness of this story with these people buying a ticket in exact same way in very similar circumstances will not look like it's repetitive. In here, it boy does it. It's just and they knew it from the get-go because they go like, "Well, we can't have like 100 of them. Let's go 50 because it's gonna take us a while." People will be like, "Jesus, how many do we have to get through?" Like at some point there would have to be like a Rocky style montage of like I don't know, setting to like the song by The Killers, where with each drum beat they'll just like bang 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 bang.
Shot,
Just
shot, 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 shot.
which would undermine the seriousness of it. So like I watched this film and they make these changes to the narrative as well, which I think and I'm not really big on like they've changed the book, sacrilege. And it's like no, like they make changes that I think detract from the experience, as in like removing the audience element. They walk in isolation. It's almost like someone says like, oh, people can't go and visit this walk, and they walk through this sort of like hellscape of dystopian post-apocalyptic Maine, right?
Just the full emptiness.
And I feel like this movie is like almost like a student film where they're trying to go after um a material that they don't have the means to execute, and in doing so they don't have a good idea as to how to execute other than translate the text verbatim to the screen. Like they don't have a good knack for it. uh, like I don't know, the 2020 miniseries for The Stand had the sort of, I don't know, audacity to play with timelines and not start at the beginning and say like, how about we just mix the beginning with the middle so we catch up to it, and then so it actually just gives you something different than the book, right? While respecting the book. This this movie is the book, right? From the minute when they just show up at the border and whatever, and they start walking south, like all the way, it's like, oh, there's the guy who shits himself. That's a scene. You get the
They don't
front row
they
seat
don't
to
shy away
someone
from it.
someone evacuating his bowels, and it was just like, wow, and that's the highlight of the film as far as I'm concerned.
Happens 2 times if someone has to just take a dump.
Yes. Yeah. But this guy doesn't take a dump, the dump takes him. Oh, Jesus. So I don't like the film. I have a feeling maybe the people who put it together didn't have a good enough idea on how to put it together, and the film like otherwise feels sort of like empty in a way. As in, like, let's get these sort of like 20 kids, and 30 extras, and just have them walk, and we don't have necessarily this is where these sort of like lost like flashbacks would have come in handy, where you just get to depart for a bit longer, to
Mhm.
so that you can just almost spend 5 minutes not walking with them, and then you're back in it. You know, the only time you get to do this is when you get to see, I think, Garrett's backstory.
It's the only
At this
one you
point, I'm
get
like
to
2 weeks
see.
removed from the or 3 weeks removed from the film, I think, or 2 weeks removed from the film. So I may be a bit fuzzy,
I've seen it more recently, so I can fix all of that.
but
But
yeah,
it's not
that's
it's
kind of
Garrett's backstory.
yeah. I'm not a fan of the film, and that's like on record. I'm not a fan of Francis Lawrence, and there was a time when I thought he was Jennifer Lawrence's dad, and I don't, I'm pretty sure he's not.
It's like it makes sense. That's why I directed all the
Oh,
Hunger
yeah,
Games.
nepotism.
Um, this is actually pretty surprising to me. I have to be honest. I didn't know this, by the way. I didn't know you were not liking this. You did not like
Oh,
this
I
film.
think you didn't know that Francis Lawrence is unrelated to Jennifer Lawrence.
I knew that. I knew that. But actually, I really like this film.
Oh wow!
Um, to a surprising degree, to an unexpected degree. I do like though Francis Lawrence. I'm not big on Hunger Games generally speaking, but everything else that I've seen, like I do like I Am Legend, especially with the original ending. I do really like Constantine. It's one of my favorites, like weirdo superhero comic book adaptations of
Hmm.
its time. Also, his feature debut, if I'm not mistaken, which is even more impressive.
Oh,
Um,
Constantine, yes, yeah, yeah.
Constantine, yeah, it's kind of impressive actually for what it is. Um,
Like, I Am Legend, like holy shit! Like, you read Matheson's book, and you're like, "Geez, guy, can you please adapt the text?" Just-
it's something
this way
different.
would have been very different.
We've had multiple,
Oh,
but that's a story for another day. I actually want to talk about I Am Legend sometime in the future. Um,
sign me up, as I have shit to
The
say.
Vincent Price one. The Vincent Price one is also very fun. Actually, I don't know if you've seen it yet. The Last Man on Earth, I think it's called. Anyway,
Is it the Omega Man? No,
yeah, there's a bunch of those. There's a bunch of
there's a
those.
few adaptations of I Am Legend.
There's plenty. But The Long Walk. Yes, I mean, I watched this after a really, really, really long and exhausting day of travel, of issues, of delays. So I was ready to almost, to be honest, fall asleep in the cinema seat at like almost 10 p.m. watching this. But it hooked me. It hooked me, giving me exactly what maybe I was hoping for from the novel with none of the fat. And I get completely what you mean that like you really like those extra element of characterizations. I like the way you rationalize them, like the reason why they are the way they are in the book, but it just didn't give me that much narratively. And appreciate that here in the film they strip it down to basics. We're gonna be focusing 99% of the time on the walk, and we're gonna follow these 50 teenagers. We're gonna make it so that they're one from each state of the states. We're gonna have in this way also some racial diversities, adding some racial thematics here, which is also compelling to me, to be honest. And just make it gripping. like turn people walking into a gripping movie experience, and gosh darn it, they did it. I've experienced some semblances of, like, not marathon, but like, parades and things like that, where you're walking with people, and there is that
Just kill me
moment.
now.
Yes, yes, and it just feels endless. And you're just walking and walking. Then you see someone who's like, I finished my water, fuck, I'm getting thirsty, and the other one who's starting to get a cramp, and you have to slow down, or you desperately need a toilet, and there's no toilets on the road, things like that. Like, it captures that feeling of just almost hopelessness, and the way that people come together to help each other that the book had so strongly in it. I do have issues with this, and my only issue, the only way I can kind of like generalize my issue, is that it's probably a bit too Hollywood for my taste. Maybe an understatement for you. Um, by too Hollywood, I mean that this has, the classic moments where people are screaming at each other, like, come on, man, you got this, you can do this. And the music swells, and there's like the crying and
Wanna
this
die in front of her? For God's sakes, man, get your shit together.
Yes, yes. When Garrity sees his mom but not his mom in the crowd. His mom is just like there by herself in front of a.
What crowd?
by- she's just, honestly, if you told me like,
It's just Judy Greer.
Hey Nick, COVID happened. Like, they had to shoot this in 2020, man. That's why they couldn't have crowds. I'd trust it. Like, what makes sense. I don't know why they completely removed the crowd element. I think it helps to
Because
give
the
it more.
social distancing, right, element would have been like
Sure.
6 feet apart.
I think they're just like, it keeps it more focused on the actual walkers
Hmm.
more than anything else, which is okay. Do we need the revenge plot with Garrity and his father being in this like Fahrenheit 9/11? Just like, do we need it? I don't think so. Does it make it more instantly engaging for the audience? Yes, in a way. I think it does everything right to, kind of like you were saying, like, it does everything right to translate it to the screen, which is take the basic premise of the novel, remove the fat, and just add a couple of changes that make it more palatable to general audiences. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It's one of those interesting cases that we have here sometimes doing this podcast where, there's not anything major for the most part until the actual ending. And even then, it's not as earth shattering a change as some other cases that we've had. But in here, I don't know. I don't know if you want to, I don't know, like, talk before I actually go into some of those big changes of the book. I'll let you go if you have anything to add or say. Sorry.
S- like I don't know. Like, well, we can talk about the changes, but I think that just in general, I want to say, like, the
Actually,
idea
let me
of
add you this. Didn't you like the casting, like the
the
camaraderie? Because I found the actors to really be doing a strong job here in elevating the characters, especially David Johnson. I think he's fantastic in everything that I've seen him so far.
so remind me. That would be McVries, yeah,
Yes,
David
yes.
Johnson. That's yeah. Again, 2 weeks removed from this, but uh, I thought, and this is just me wishing for something better or something I could chew on a little bit differently because imagine this. I actually think about that. Asking more, like, but this would have been kind of almost weird and maybe a little bit too edgy for its own good. Maybe this just sounds good on paper, but it really isn't. Like, there's Philip Seymour Hoffman's son plays the role of Garrity, right?
Cooper Hoffman.
Cooper Hoffman, right? How about we get like the main cast of the 10 big ones? How about have them all be nepo babies?
Okay.
Yeah, all of them. Like, John David Washington. I suppose too old, but you know what I mean.
John David Washington as a teenager.
No,
41
but you
year
know what I
old
mean.
John David
There's
Washington.
more. There's more. There's more of them. There's got to be more of them.
Jack Quaid.
Jack Quaid.
I don't
There
know.
you go. You're talking. And now you can get somewhere of this. It's just, I,
Dakota Johnson. I don't know any other Nepo babies.
What do you mean you don't like them? They're all nepo babies. Like half of them,
I'm
like half of
blanking. I'm blanking.
half of Hollywood has like if you go on their Wikipedia pages, their parents will have a hyperlink. You know?
Oh, the Arnold's son. What's his name?
Yeah,
Patrick. Patrick
Patrick
Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger.
He's
You
pretty
know?
good, actually.
But yeah, like have that as a concept of and that would have been like a shrewd commentary on and on something, I suppose. I'm not sure how cohesive this would be, but at least it would be fun for me. But what I because what I find in
That's
here is just
insane
like
casting.
the episodic nature of this, because they essentially just adapt the text and say like, well, the guy has to shit himself, the Charlie horse guy, and they
There's
go
the
in order:
hill.
Charlie
There's the
horse, shit
hill.
yourself, the guy who gets Markovich gets killed, the guy whose legs get torn to shreds, and there are like maybe 6 or 7 big moments in the book, right?
Hmm, hmm.
Um, the guy who tries to storm the tank and he gets made an example of by like, oh, they'll bleed you out or whatever because they'll shoot in your gut, whatever, because normally they just give you the courtesy of just like lights out, you know
Yeah.
shoot you in the face. um the guy who runs to the forest and gets gunned down, or to the shop, I don't know, I can't remember now exactly.
In the film is the shop. I think
I
in the
think it's
book it's the
in the
forest.
forest in the book, I think, and he just like walks and he goes like, maybe they won't notice.
Slow and steady.
Slow
No
and
one will
steady,
notice.
just like disappear into a hedge like Homer Simpson, and just nope.
It is
But
one of those you can visualize it when you're reading the book. You can totally visualize it how it's like stealthily. No one's.
just slowly, just
There's plenty of us.
inch
No one
by
will
inch,
notice.
inch by inch. But yeah, there's there are elements to this. Like one big gripe I have is, and just this goes beyond book versus film, just the film itself and what the actual text was supposed to speak to is not necessarily valid anymore,
In
or
what way?
doesn't have the same punch. Like if you really wanted to make this movie, it would have been like at the time. Like this book comes out in 1917. I guess it was like no one gives a shit because it's Richard Bachman. Who? Like it's 150 and it's some like airport stand or whatever. Like you can like people use it as a doorstop, or um but this would have been the time to make this movie when the Vietnam War conversation is still fresh in people's minds, and this is where this is relevant. Like now, it's not necessarily relevant. Like, well, you have to map different interpretations over top of it, because the Vietnam one is kind of like, who is it for? Like, no one's around who remembers this, right? And people who do remember this, they'll be like, "Oh, I remember seeing like these newsreel sort of footage like when I was 5." You know,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like a bit too late for this. And then you could maybe generalize this and say like, well, how do you make this more relevant to, because ever since, well, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't I don't necessarily know if, because I think during the Vietnam War, Americans operated a draft, as in like they would draft people to military,
Yes.
right? I don't think that this happened since. So if you wanted to join the war on terror and go to Afghanistan or to the Gulf, you actually would have to go and sign up. So it's a little bit different. And ever since that war in Vietnam, I suppose, the 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 death toll on the American soldiers would never go anywhere near those levels. Like you've never seen people like in combined like Afghanistan and Iraq. This doesn't even touch the size of how many people lost their lives in Vietnam, right?
Mm.
I suppose on the American side. Like if you look on the other side, like the story is
That's a
different.
different. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in terms of like, sending our boys to their deaths, you know, they probably will come back. They will probably be severely damaged, but the story will be different. So it's kind
They'll
of,
be fine.
I mean, they will be there. It's not gonna be like like World War I, when it's just like it's 60% chance that this fucker's not coming back, and if he does come back, probably not all 4 limbs will be on him. You know, it's no longer like that, right? So you'd have to like do something to the text. You'd actually have to reason with what the text is supposed to mean, what it talks about, and just make adjustments and risk offending the author. Because Stephen King, I mean, he's mellowed since then. has always been very particular about people messing with the shit. so
In
but I
weird
think as
ways.
like if you want to adapt it verbatim, which is more or less what's happening in here with these sort of subtle changes that you wanted to go to, right? It's still the text, and I feel like the text is 40 years too late. Like this movie was like George Romero should have made this in the 80s, you know.
I can see George Romero making this, to be honest. I think that was an inspired choice. But I don't necessarily agree that this doesn't work today as a story.
Okay.
I think especially I can't remember if they, well, they don't necessarily mention it in the book, but they do put a lot of emphasis on the economic reality of this world in the film that the people
Mm,
are living in, where basically everyone is poor, they have no money, they have no nothing. And by taking part into this walk, it's probably the best opportunity for them to actually save their families, make something of themselves, just like, actually have hope for the future.
it's kind of like The Running Man.
Kind
Like
of
if you
like,
think about it, like
yes,
the book,
yes,
The Running
yes.
Man.
Yeah, I started reading it now, and that's the basic premise about it. It's very, which is not very present in the book of The Long Walk. This idea of like, oh, you get to the end and you automatically get shit rich, just like insanely rich to a degree you cannot even comprehend. Plus, you get one gift, one wish, sorry, one desire of whatever you want. Whatever you want, they will give it to you. Doesn't matter what it is, you get it. Someone once got a elephant to ride it back home. Sure, why not? Um, and I think it
How long did
speaks
he
to,
wait for that elephant, by the way? He's just like, I
and
want an
that,
elephant. And everyone's like, Shit,
and he just like
hold
sits
tight.
on the
Sit
ground and
tight.
waits.
Waiting to get some. The major gets on the phone, like, I want an elephant, like right now. What do you mean you don't have, like, I want an elephant?
Stat, like with a helicopter carrying it. Um,
Operation Dumble Drop. You
it is something I can. It is something that fits with where we are right now, where you are in the era of social media entertainers. You're in the era of the Mr. Beasts of the world, where people would do crazy shit just to get rich, just to get a quick buck, and just to feel like their life is meaningful. And in that sense, I get it. I also get the appeal, and even though it's become just such a low hanging fruit that I'm very much tired of, but I do get the appeal of reading the book and being just like, hey, the major can kind of be like Trump. Just like this far right asshole, uh, villainous, irredeemable man. It's like, sure,
like, it's like in Mickey 17, right? Mark
it's
Ruffalo is kind
it's
of,
exactly like in Mickey 17. The only difference is that
everyone dies once.
yes, yes, and Mark Hamill, bless him, he's very good in this film. Actually, I really like him. Um, it does exactly what you expect him to do when you read like, oh, Mark Hamill plays the major. It's exactly what you expect him to do. Um, and he does a really good job. I found, to be honest, the entire cast to be very strong. But no, again, I found it to be surprisingly relevant to our times. Even though it's in a heavy-handed way, which, to be fair, the book itself was not particularly subtle about its allegorical element and its connections to the Vietnam War and just America at the time. I found it to be effective in that sense. But the
Mhm.
only thing I'm not too big on, as I mentioned, is primarily this Fahrenheit related change of like, it's the major killed the father of Gary because he was reading forbidden books. He was teaching them. And so that's the reason why Garrett enlists in the Long Walk, because he wants to win it just so he can kill the major. Um, it's not bad. I think it's an interesting change. I think it's one of those changes you make to make the ending more cinematic in a way.
Mhm.
You could never have the book just end with him reaching the end and then just keeps walking, maybe like seeing the figure. Like that's it too abstract to actually portray on
Yeah.
screen.
I mean, I'd love that ending, but I agreed. It's too abstract, and this invites the sort of, let's just say, what I like to call the mother response. I remember from seeing Darren Aronofsky's Mother, a guy standing up at the ending, pointing a finger at the screen and asking, "What the fuck was this shit?" And this is a direct quote from that man.
I can
His
imagine.
name I can't recall because he looked at me too. Like he was just like he like wanted me to answer. I'm like I don't know. He's just like who are you? He was
Confirm
really
it makes
angry.
no sense, please. Um, I mean, that
People
could
who
probably
made this piece of shit are in this room.
fool Friedkin. Um, Probably, maybe it was Friedkin. Maybe you just didn't recognize him.
Yeah, that was pretty. Yeah, the
um,
people who made when he was
but
talking
anyway,
about The Exorcist too.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about The Exorcist too. Yeah, but no, yeah, just again like major changes. We talked about the less people. It's all about the states. There's more racial diversity. They completely changed the ending of the film, where it's not Garrity winning, but he actually pulls a switcheroo on McCree's. They're actually the last two standing. It's not Garrity with Stebbins,
Hmm.
but it's Garrity McCree's, and he sacrifices himself. I found it to be touching, but again, hear me out.
Hmm.
On paper, I really like the ending. I like the idea, of the sacrifice that Garrity understands that there's no reason to pursue violence from his side because what's the point of living with violence, repeating what his father did and all of that. He decides to go out, kind of like sacrificing himself, letting his friend win because he can maybe actually do something with the future. But the friend himself has no idea what to do with his future, what to do that's right. And seeing the sacrifice of Garrity, he decides to actually fulfill his wish. Because, yes, there was no way that Garrity could have won either way. But this way, he actually gives meaning and sense to his life by killing the Major. I like it on paper. I don't dislike it in the film, but it gets, I don't know, to be honest, the shock of seeing Garrity die, I thought that worked for me. I was like, oh, I was not expecting this kind
Hmm.
of like twist for people who've read the book. I think if not read the book, I noticed people gasping in my theaters. It was like, okay, it's also working for people who don't know this. But you come to expect that's like the thing, right? It's the first character that's introduced. He has the vendetta. He has every reason to be the last one standing, but he's not. And there is this like dramatic irony, where Garrity dies and the Major is just like, well, number 37, whatever the fuck, like, you've won. And the music is playing America, America, and there's people's, and there's a crowd, everyone's gathered for the ending. Oh yes, I like that dissonance. I like the how morbid it is. Just like people chanting America and being very happy while there's a kid with a bullet hole in his head, just bleeding out on the floor. Um, Very grim, very very grim. But I don't know. Again, it's the Hollywood element. It's the give me the rifle and then just like shooting him down. I get like the symbolism. It's the black man shooting the military symbol, shooting the Trump figure, shooting the far right, not instantly getting gunned down himself and then getting to walk out of it. Kind of left me like, what are we supposed to get out of this? Of him continuing his long walk? That's when they kind of try to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to
Hmm.
have their new ending, but they also want to homage the original ending with him continuing to walk. But there's
Yeah.
no reality where he would have walked. Maybe we can take it. I don't even want to be one of those
No,
like
just they're
you.
they're they're like
You're
that's
not
his
supposed to.
wish.
You're not supposed to make it. I guess you're not supposed to take it like
Oh,
literally.
it's not
It's all
literally. Yeah, just like
metaphoric.
I mean,
It's like I guess I don't know.
I mean,
It's the
it's
only sour note that I have with the film, to be honest,
I
because
mean, it's
everything else is done as it should. Like I found it to be very compelling, actually shocking. Like again, the sound effects are terrifying whenever there's a gunshot.
that's
Um,
supposed to that's actually something that they really do well because the sort of the rifle reports are supposed to like send shivers down your spine,
they make you
right? They're
jump.
because especially the first one, right? Because like every single one of these shots means like one fewer opponent, one of
Oh, fuck.
another one bites the dust,
And
you know.
the close up of the kid getting shot in, like Jojo Rabbit getting shot in the face.
Yeah,
It's just like the bullet. It's like, oh, they're
yeah,
going there. They're going
yeah.
there.
But also
Even the
like
whole
it's
sequence with the hill, I really liked. Where he's just like trying to get up the hill, and people are like dropping like flies behind him. Warning! Or no,
Mhm,
choo, choo, choo. It's like
mhm,
fuck. It's intense. It's genuinely had me gripping my seat.
mhm. I mean, by the way, on the ending, like it's impossible
Yeah,
not
sorry.
to go abstract. By the way, because it's like the book implies an abstract ending anyway, right?
Yeah,
This
yeah, yeah,
it,
yeah.
it kind of like the book doesn't end; it fades to black, kind of sort of like some songs don't have an ending; they just fade,
That's a
right?
very good way of putting it. Actually, yes, yes.
So
It's the like in conceptualizing the PTSD when PTSD wasn't really a thing that you
I
mentioned.
understand that. But I will go out on a limb and I'll say Francis Lawrence, or maybe the people who also like wrote the script, and I suppose this is still Hollywood, so like Lawrence would have been involved in like directing script rewrites, and there would have been some back and forth here and there. So there will be an element of director's involvement in shaping the story prior to stepping on set, right? I don't think these people had it in them to actually do it. And if I were to have my pick, I would love Spike Lee to do it. Like now, if you want this movie made now, give it to Spike Lee. Fuck me, and
Spike Lee.
and make half of these
Wow.
people black, or maybe even just no, like just give Spike Lee just full reign to just say like change whatever the hell you want, but say I can imagine the same ending with Mark Hamill going like you won, and there's sort of fireworks and flags, and Terence Blanchard's score kicks in with these horns everywhere, and it becomes epic, and you can see David Johnson on a dolly zoom, not
Yeah,
on
there
a
you
dolly
go.
zoom, on
There
a
you go.
sort of on a Spike Lee dolly, just everything moves, and he goes like the fuck, and then he shoots the guy. I can see this as an ending almost like out of like, um, like out of Do the Right Thing, you know? And I could dig that. This would have and if anyone Spike Lee had an you know could make a let's just say Vietnam-based movie relevant in 2020, So I think it's possible. So I feel like the filmmakers didn't really have the proverbial balls to really push the material. So push against the sort of seams to see how far you can stretch this before it actually comes apart, right? And I think this is partly because they kind of well are in, let's just say, deferential to Stephen King's material. They say, well, that's not in the book. I mean, but they have to make these changes. When it's like, oh, they shot this during the pandemic, right? Didn't they?
They showed it last year. Like it
Oh,
was
last
announced
year.
in
So it's not like, oh,
2023.
we have to take the crowd out because they would have to look like a Finnish queue when everyone's 2 meter apart.
Or it's all CGI or something. Yeah.
Or something like that, right? It's just I feel like there's an opportunity missed in here, and I think maybe some of these changes are kind of like almost like looks like the filmmakers were second guessing themselves, or maybe the producers were second guessing the choices. And like say you cast David Johnson as McVrees, and he's one of the last people to die, right, in the book, right? And he's the one who goes like, I
The
think
second
I've
to
had enough
last.
things. He goes like, he's like John Coffey in The Green Mile. I'm very tired, boss. I'm gonna sit down, you know. And if you make that decision and make out of essentially a cast of white males the one black recognizable very likable person go and bite the dust, they will say like, well, people are not gonna like that, we have to make the black guy win because that will make it's just like you could see, you can almost hear the conversation in some kind of a meeting room on this,
I
like,
don't
oh,
know.
what is it gonna like, how is this gonna be interpreted? Wh- are we like, are we gonna hit the right like, is it gonna get slain on Twitter or X, or not on Blue Sky or whatever, right? Because Twitter is full of racists. But um but you know what I mean, like it kind of feels
This is
like
like something. I
if
don't know if you've seen the studio, but there's an entire episode about this exact thing happening.
really, I should
Yes.
watch the studio. But the idea of like these, they make this choice, a very inspired choice of making McVrees black, because like in the book, like for all I care, like apart from a few Native Americans, they're all white, you
Yeah.
know. And like they all have like very white sounding names like Gary, you know, or Hank, or or Frank. That's so. Like I see this as an interesting choice. Like to kind of color code the story in a different way, and with that comes this like, oh, like, well, we have to like make sure that this has to be like an equal opportunity killing sort of scenario, and with that we have to make sure that we don't press on the wrong button, and we don't spark a riot because we don't want to be notorious with our film.
I
We don't.
mean, this is a movie where it opens with a child getting his head blown off in a
Yeah, a
close up.
white child.
A white child. It's like 15 or something, 16. Like I don't necessarily think
Yeah,
that
guy
it
who
was.
lied to get in there, right?
I mean, there are other black people, black actors in this. You have the Asian guy as well. Like I don't necessarily think it was like a racial choice. I think it was like an intentional choice to switch it around. And the only problem that I have is that I find it easy to conceptualize,
Hmm.
but in the moment it felt slightly weird. And it should probably be the opposite. I prefer the opposite in a way. I prefer to be like, oh, when you're watching it and you're in the film, you're like, all of this makes sense. And then maybe you think about it later and like, actually, I can see the cracks. But to have the opposite, I don't think it's necessarily great
Because like in the book, the like one like Stebbins is the one with a reason.
because he's the son, he's the bastard child. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's the rabbit, right? That's the
Hmm.
whole act named after him, the rabbit, right? He's the guy who's supposed to make the thing last longer, right?
Because he's like peak Aryan, the peak child.
Yeah, because he's the son of the major, who's like Douglas MacArthur meets Arnold Schwarzenegger meets whatever. Like he's like a
He knows all the
genetically
tricks.
engineered sort of marvel of medicine or whatever, right?
Yeah,
It's
which he
not in the text,
doesn't.
by the way. I'm just making this shit up, but
Yeah. Which is not super well translated in the film because they actually downplay him a lot.
because like in the book, they almost like downplay him themselves, and like, what is he wearing? Like tennis shoes or whatever. He has just weird shoes. He doesn't look like he's prepared for this.
Hmm. He doesn't
But
talk much as well, right?
yeah, he keeps to himself. He walks just above above
The-
the line, so he doesn't stress himself too much. But but the idea of like said just getting because yeah, again, 2 weeks removed. I think Stebbins in the film dies. He's the one before last to die, and then Garrity and McVree's
yeah, they
Garrity
switch
like
places. Like
they
Reeves and
switch places.
Sebs, yeah.
Yeah, and they kind of do like omit a few flashbacks where like you almost get the foreshadowing of the final two, where they talk about some of these in the book, right? Where my dad once showed me the long walk, and I remember these two men just on like bloody stumps, essentially just walking, and one of them just falling face first, right? Because they were just walking like that for like 50 miles, just the two of them, just
Mhm.
screaming, right? Um, but yeah, there's I find the choice to change it interesting because it makes a different comment. It makes it more overtly anti-establishment.
Yeah, just the respect they have for each other and like fuck the government, yeah. Fuck the
Um,
establishment.
but at the same time, I like the allegory to modernity. I don't necessarily see fleshed out that well in here. As in, like, well, I suppose that sort of like the allegory is just life. As in, like, well, it's all a rat race, and if it's in the pyramid of things, there's only like one like billionaire. It's all Sam Altman and Elon Musk are going to be the rich people when this when all the dust settles and like the cards are laid down and whatever. When all the shakes down, there's going to be everyone is going to be dead, but these two fuckers, right? I suppose you can read into it that way, but it requires you to read into it because the sort of the military analogy of sending kids to war is there. It's just no longer as relevant as it used to be, right? um because it's because of its like the Fahrenheit 451 or whatever, right? This of the idea of like this like people reading books they're not supposed to, and and and
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
sort of the backdoor world building that's kind of sort of in here. I that's fine that it's there. It's just I feel it lacks direction in a way. It lacks decision making. Like it feels like there's people who are in hoc to the author, and or they don't want to offend the author by making changes, or but they still want to make changes, so they make strategic changes to make their lives a little bit easier. So like cut it down from 100 to 50, so we don't have to sit here for 4 hours. Um, remove the crowd so it's easier, so we don't have to hire because we have only $7 million or whatever. Like these are like just strategic decisions, just they're made in a spreadsheet, right? They're not
I
artistically driven.
I don't know. That's a bit harsh. That's a bit harsh. Like we don't know all of the process behind some of those choices, and I don't mind them. I think I think if you had the crowds, the film as a whole would feel different. I think there is something about the fact that people are kind of indifferent to this in terms of wanting to witness it live, but you always have the TV camera, whatever, that's pointed at them in one of the tanks. And
Hmm.
then at the end, there is the crowd like gathered for the finale.
Yeah. It's just nice that like, oh, there's gonna be a finale. Let's just get people out.
It's
It's
like for
just
the Tour de France or Tour of Italy or whatever. It's like, yeah, you go to the ending just to see them reach the goal.
yeah, it's just in here you don't quite like everyone's like, oh, there's four of them. Like we should probably start
Yeah,
gathering
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
because we don't know. What if they just like all three of them go like bang, bang, bang in like 1 minute and there's like no one left their house? You know,
Very
it would be
sad.
weird. Um, I and I just feel like there's yeah, it stinks of a lack of like courage in here. And this is comes back to like Francis Lawrence is a guy who you get to make this movie because like he did the Hunger Games, so might as well like do the protoplast to the Hunger Games because that predates that kind of shit by like 3 decades, right?
I think this was supposed to have Andrea Overdahl as well. I think that's kind of how you say
I
his
think I
name.
suppose like everyone and their mother was supposed to at some point attached to it, right? But that makes sense.
I think Francis Lawrence was probably the best choice.
See, I I don't like him that much. I mean, like
Like nowadays, who would you get of like who's an active filmmaker who's not?
Spike Lee, I'm telling you.
Who's not Spike Lee? Who's not like a name, like an auteur? Like no, like you're never gonna get Martin Scorsese's Long Walk or Spike Lee's Long Walk. Like I cannot
You
think of
could.
someone else who does genre filmmaking, like Hollywood type genre filmmaking, who can be like, I'm gonna make the Long Walk and make it like good.
Like again, give it to Edgar Wright, but he was busy doing the other one of the Bachman books, right? B-
I
Because
think
like what I feel is just happening is like think about like color palette is very like it's very gray, it's very subdued because it's very on the nose and heavy handed that way. Did you notice?
it's
They
like
all
the
just
roads color palette.
yeah,
Just like it has to
and
be
I'm just saying
oppressive
like
and gray and wasteland.
in the road, I get the point of that. In here just like and I read the book, you don't feel the grayness in the setting. It feels just like sun's blaring at them, they just get sunburned. It's just like, wow, Maine's really beautiful. It's just like, no, it's not in here. Like it's dog shit. Like when they walk through this wasteland, right? And it's just like, no, it would have been a choice. Make colorful. Make this world beautiful. Make them look like they're just that this horror show is happening against the backdrop of essentially just the farming paradise of like
But that's
just
completely
fields
that's
and trees.
that's killing the entire like story of the movie. Like you cannot have a beautiful world and then be like, oh, but like life sucks here. It's a
Isn't that
cinematic
what the
shorthand.
Vietnam
It's a
War was?
cinematic
Like
shorthand.
isn't that what the Vietnam War was? Like if you go to Vietnam to these like lush jungles and whatever, it's like this beautiful and just like people just living their lives. There's like nature and shit. And now there's carnage in here. Like think about apocalypse now. You have this sort of these beaches where these fuckers go like they bomb the shit out of something and they go surfing. Because it's
That's
beautiful and
Vietnam.
you get to
That's not
surf in
Maine.
there. It's the paradise you get to bomb first and then you go and go and do some surfing, and you go like, man, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. You know what I mean? In here, it's kind of like, no, this is nihilistic and gray, so everything has to be nihilistic and gray. Kind of sort of like the Hunger Games is on the nose that way. It's like, no, it's a dystopia, so everything has to be appropriately dystopian. It has to look great, it has to be subdued, because that's this sort of aesthetic that way. And at the same time, this aesthetic wasn't present in like I Am Legend and Constantine. This is something that I think is the product of like, oh, this is how you do a Hunger Games film. So like, let's get a guy who did the Hunger Games. He goes like, I know how to do it. Oh, it's like the Hunger Games. I'm gonna shoot it exactly like the Hunger Games films. It's kind of how it feels like, uninspired. Like they didn't spend enough time conceptualizing this as its own thing. They were like, oh, that's how I know how to do that kind of stuff. Let me do my thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I get it. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. Like even talking about it again, I really ah, I was almost moved in some parts of the film while watching it, despite the emotional manipulation that was clearly present. Like when you're watching a movie and you can feel your heart and your brain just like working against each other, where your brain
Yeah.
is telling you like they're doing everything they can just to try and make you cry, and the heart is like, yeah, but it's working. Just
Yeah.
like the moments
Look,
where they're shouting at each other and they're holding each other.
and you know
It's
it's a
like, no, it's
cliche,
only
and
horse, walk with me. You're like, ah, walk backwards. Or when the guy kills him, gets himself get killed, and the other guy runs to him, and everyone stops. Garrity, come back. And it's like, no, no, come on, man. We can do this. We can do this. It's like, it's inspiring. It's touching. I think it's one of those cases where direction, writing can be good, can be mediocre, whatever. I think the actors really sell it in a way
Mhm.
that if you had the wrong guy anywhere in this cast, anywhere, it would have collapsed completely.
The
Um,
Olsen guy is kind of sort of like the guy who was kind of getting on my nerves.
which guy?
A small Asian dude. Is it Hank Olsen?
Oh,
Frank Olsen?
played by Ben Wong.
Yeah. So he was
Um,
kind of getting on my nerves, isn't like he was just like mumbling half the time. He was just yeah, it was very very odd characterization. This
I
is it
didn't.
sounds like this is not how I imagined him, but it's
I
just like
found it very
yeah,
depressive because you see him at first where he's like very up energy and just
like
like
he's
in
the one
it.
with the plan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then he just like gradually closes himself more and more in his shell to just try and survive each moment. And I don't know, like it's an ugly film, but in an effective, like we mentioned, the road similar to the road. It's ugly in the sense that you know people getting increasingly dirty, progressively dirty as the film goes on. It's the body horror did work for me in a
Hmm.
couple of instances. There's especially, is it a journalist, I believe, who starts like walking on his stump or something, where like the feet gets crooked and he's walking on his whatever, just like the end of his leg is completely starting to
Hmm.
fall apart. Um,
Oh, the guy who goes like, "I'm gonna write a book when I'm finished." Like,
no,
dude, you
you're
need to win to
to write it, yeah, yeah, to finish.
write it. It's so stupid. But again, I mean, this I don't mind because
That's
there
in
will
the
be
book
like
as well. That's in the book
it's
as
in the
well.
book, but I don't mind that there will be someone who's just like weirdly op- almost too optimistic not to see how erroneous he is, how
Naive.
badly out of step with reality he is. I get that. These sort of elements of body horror and this all works. And I would say most of these characterizations, this is like if there's the only thing that really saves this film for me, and this is not like, oh, this movie is terrible. It's just not good. Are these sort of the like well the characterizations and how performers actually put some life behind it, behind their characters. That's kind of what makes this movie cook, because that's what makes the book cook as well, right? Because you get to see these guys develop these weird relationships between each other, um, and they're not, and you can see how they take King's text and kind of sort of like make it their own that way, so
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like a Neil Simon goes to war sort of situation where you have like 12 people and everyone's waiting for the other guy to finish their line, so they get to say everyone how they're gonna open up a cinema or whatever when they finish, or whatever the hell their wish is gonna be, you know.
Yeah, they have good banter. They play off each other very effectively.
Yeah. So, and that's something the King has always been good with, the sort of the idea of like let's just say relatable dialogue, that's also of the time of the 70s and 60s. Like think
Mhm.
about it. And this is something that's kind of difficult. You'd have to actually make changes to the text because he was extremely good at kind of aping what people would talk like at a time when he's setting this thing, right? Which means if you want to set this thing now, everyone speaks like they're in the 60s, you know? Just kind of like the stand has this problem as well. Like even though he reset this book in the 90s when he was allowed to do like reinstate the 400 pages back into the text. So he just sets this instead of like the 70s, it's now in the 90s. But all the like pop culture references are changed to the ones from the 80s, but the sort of like some shit stays like decades off. Like
Yeah.
there's this guy who's like a musician. He has this song, "Baby, Can You Dig Your Man?" I was just like, this is not a song that anyone would ever write in 1990. This would never be. This would have never been a hit in 1990.
That's
This is a
amazing. I love
60s
that
song.
part. Yeah,
You know, this is not the time. And it's just like, oh no, yeah, no one's making a living out of playing an acoustic guitar in 1990. Mm-mm, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
he has these sort of like, and that's something I just enjoy about his work. But in the film, you can kind of see like these guys kind of talk like they're like, well, maybe they are, maybe this is a Vietnam analogy or metaphor because they do talk like guys who would be just the right age to go to Vietnam, and maybe this is kind of like that because they speak like they're from like late 60s and early 70s, you know, and because they don't have like there's no cultural touchstone for you to place it like now or to
like the
relate to it that
clothes
way.
and the yeah, there's no tech really. No, it's
Yeah.
it's well done in capturing the spirit and the time and place, the lack of time and place
See,
of the novel.
that's that's a good thing, right? It's like, oh, make it timeless. I think what's his face guy who did like It Follows, for instance, right? He would like
John Cameron Mitchell,
Yeah,
John
something
David Mitchell,
John
John
David
David
Mitchell,
Washington,
John David Washington. No, Mitchell's is his last name, I think. But
David Robert,
David Robert
David
Mitchell.
Robert
Like
Mitchell.
when he wouldn't give people smartphones, they would have these like clam phones or whatever, like landlines and whatever. So you're just like, don't know where it actually, what's the time in this display takes place at, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah, yeah.
here, they do it like that as well. It's just like you don't have any markers for cultural sort of positioning of like, is it set like now? Is it alternative now? Or is it alternative 70s? Is it the future? Is it whatever? What is it, right? But people speak like in the 70s. So it's like, on one hand, they don't, but then they do because they're in hoc to the text, right?
Hmm.
And the text positions itself kind of when it was written because King was skilled at just writing dialogue, a naturalistic dialogues, and it just happens that naturalistic dialogue set in like written in the late 60s and later on rewritten in the late 70s would sound like from that time. But now you make it 46 years later and it sounds like from that time, but you're kind of sort of like, oh, we're not acknowledging. It's just like, no, it's I don't know when is it now? Is it future? Is it past? No, it sounds like these guys are going to Vietnam, but you're not telling me. you know? So that's why when
That's
you're
fair.
saying like, oh, I can map these allegories onto my own experience. I mean, I'm glad that you can, right? But it feels like I have to do extra legwork. I have to really read into the text of the film. I have to really do some extra work to see it and feel it because I cannot escape the fact that these guys sound like they're just about to go to Vietnam, and the filmmaker and the Mark Hamill looks like Donald Trump. It's just weird that way. But then again, Nixon, he just postures himself after Nixon as well in more ways than one. Even
Well,
"Make
it's
America Great
history
Again" is kind of
repeating
stolen from
itself.
him, right?
Something that
Yeah.
was relevant in 66, that was relevant in 79, is still relevant in 2025.
Yeah, maybe that's the reading, as in like, well, this whole idea of like Trump America is essentially like, what if Nixon had his way, you know? Um,
Yeah.
maybe that's that. But in order to get there, I have to read into it and get past the Francis Lawrence aesthetic and all the bits that really annoy me. And while I watch this film and wish that Spike Lee would have, instead of readapting or remaking Kurosawa, would do this instead. you know?
That's a very wishful thinking, but also I think a very Good note to start drawing this conversation to a close. Just like Stephen King is out of touch with young people's writing and music tastes, we're also out of time. Um, I normally would ask around this point, like your final thoughts and what's your favorite version of this story. I take it
The
you
book.
probably do prefer the book.
Short and sweet, the book. I know it's not like me to be short and sweet, but yeah, I love the book more. But yeah, film's passable just about, but yeah, the book is an underrated classic in my view.
That's fair, and also like a childhood class, well, not childhood classic, but like one of the important texts of
I was quite young when I read
your
it first. Yeah.
youth. Um, for me, I would actually probably go with the film. Maybe sacrilege. I
Courage.
know.
Ay, ay, ay.
But the film gave me pretty much the same emotions that the highs of the book gave me,
Mhm,
but just in a more enjoyable package. I feel like everything that you talked about of like the parts that don't like the book, why they have value and merit, I feel them in later King books. I feel it in all the characterizations from The Stand,
mhm.
from Green Mile, just like those long ass books that actually still work. I think because he was younger, that's fair. Um, some of those parts just feel very sluggish. Or even it, to be honest, actually more like it, where he's just spending a lot of time talking about families and girls and wanting to have sex and wanting to have a girlfriend and the importance of all those things that make life beautiful. Great. The movie doesn't have them, maybe to a fault again, but it makes up for it with genuine camaraderie between the cast, really good banter, really good thrills, and just capturing the harrowing essence of the novel, putting it into this movie in a way that's more digestible for a mainstream audience, I guess. But to the point, I told you this off mic as well. I noticed like people were spent after the movie ended. It wasn't that vibe when if you finish a movie and people are joyfully leaving the cinema to go to the bathroom, maybe go grab some snacks, go get some dinner. People looked spent in the way they look spent after Warfare or after watching No Other Land and those like heavy, like shell shock movies and documentaries that just shake you in a way. I've not found this to be particularly appealing for people who are not into watching very depressive movies, which I get. I know we're living dark times,
Yeah,
so
it's a
people would.
difficult movie to recommend. I'll give you that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't you want to watch a movie about 2 hours where you have teenagers getting shot as they try to keep walking. And I think, and that's something we didn't touch on, it's the last comment I'll make about this story, is just the relatability of walking. There's one moment in the film, and like the book is full of those little moments, but also in the film, when you have oh gosh, what's his face? Barkovich toying with the other kid, and
Mhm.
he lets him fall to the ground, and he like slides on the pavement.
Oh yeah,
The
that's a good moment. Jeez,
visceral reaction,
like
because it's like you've felt that, like everyone has slid on
carpet
the
burns
pavement.
everywhere.
Yes, carpet burns, all of that. Like I think that's also the secret recipe to not just the film but the book as well. Doesn't matter,
Mhm.
like we can talk about Vietnam, we can talk about political allegories, everything that we want for the whole day, but then I think very simply for some people it's just that we've all had to walk and we all know how tiring and how much it sucks. And so to see and read about people having to walk for 5 days straight is just inherently horrific and tiring and exhausting. And I think it's what makes Stephen King special. When he was
Mhm.
younger and now that he's older as well, he always gets it. He always gets interesting, compelling hooks, and he tells unique stories. And I think that's always worth celebrating. On that note, Jakub, before we close off, what's your favorite quote or passage from the book?
From the book, I've always like there are two scenes that really like bursts of violence. There we always have always stayed with me. Like the moment where um the kid gets run over by a tank, and then when Barkovich kills himself, I think with a spoon or whatever the hell he has in there, but
A spoon
like
or a pen or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or a pen, it's just these are especially because they all come out of these relationships. The idea that Barkovich is kind of like the sociopath in the group. He's kind of like that. He doesn't belong. He's the agent of chaos in there, and all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, he punches his own ticket. That's always stayed with me. And then when I was rereading this at this point, like a month ago, it it was almost like I had to give myself pause. Like the book
Mm,
the book doesn't have like memorable quotes to me in
mhm,
that, like, oh, that's a good line. uh because they're all sort of like, it's built out, like its building blocks are cliches, and then these cliches are there for a reason, because they're supposed to be like the bell curve, the bulk of the bell curve of the human experience being sort of headed into a place, kind of sort of, and forced to coexist and fight for themselves, right?
mhm.
It's not going to be composed out of special people, but Barkovich is kind of one of those special characters. He's like one in 100, the guy who you don't want to really be around, but you kind of have to be, And then when he punches his own ticket, it always gives me pause. And at the same time, he's kind of like, there's this book is kind of, in a way, kind of like, I don't want to say young King's way of saying, like, this is my Lord of the Flies. Um,
Hmm,
in
I
a
can see
way.
that. I
It's
can
just
see that.
there's a different, yeah. It's not like, oh, I'm going to rip it off entirely, but he's on record, like, Lord of the Flies is like one of his favorite books of all time, right? But the idea of like this being a backdoor dystopia, and like, like, it takes place after like a nuclear holocaust or whatever. You don't even know that it does, but it does. And the whole idea that these sort of people put in this predicament, and relationships form, and with on that, like, tribes form, and then just they start recreating like weird sort of tribal politics. That's in here too, right? But the idea of, in this sort of mess, there's this agent of chaos who you almost don't want to read about, because he's just unpleasant. And you see him, like, and then how he chooses to end his life. It's, for me, this is just, yeah, wow. That's I'm not sure if this satisfies your criteria for what's your favorite passage, but I'm gonna stick to my guns in here.
No, no, totally, totally. And yeah, Barkovich is one of those characters that will stick with me, probably more than any other from this book. Just haunting. And Stephen King knows how to write a nice sociopath.
That's J.
Um,
Paul Getty from All the Money in the World, by the way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Charlie Plummer. I was very happy to see him back on the screen.
For
I
a
thought
second,
he'd
I
been a
thought, is
while.
he Christopher Plummer's like grandson? Please tell me it's nepotism, but it's not.
Thankfully, it's another case after Francis Lawrence. Um, for me, I did write down a quote, and similar to you, like when I was reading, compared to other books, there weren't like big passages where I was like, oh my god, this passage is like amazing, and just like it hit me in a way I was not expecting. It's very serviceable writing in that sense. It's something that's, again, it shows how he has improved over time, where he progressively got even better in writing more flowery prose when needed, when it fits, even though he's usually a more economical storyteller.
No, but
Um,
he has a knack for a great metaphor and a simile.
oh yeah,
Holy
yeah, yeah.
shit, he has a knack for.
When he pulls it out, yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tell it's coming as well. He's just like, let me just frame it nicely on the page as well. But I did write down this quote: "Any game looks straight if everyone is being cheated at once."
Yep.
It's just, again, encapsulates the entire
Is this how you read
story.
into so this being a modern has this modern equivalency, because we kind of all feel like we're part of the rigged system ourselves.
Yes, you just accept the rules because that's how it works. And if someone tells you, but it's wrong, it's like, but we're all doing the same thing. Like we're all playing the same game here. And if it's
Yep.
rigged for everyone, then it's just a game, a normal game, um, which is very dark again. But how about the film? I know you were not a fan of it, but what would be your favorite scene from the film? I can go first if you want.
Hmm?
I can go first if you want.
Go first because like yeah.
You're
Oh no,
struggling.
I'll tell you this.
Okay.
The moment when he has an interaction with his mom is kind of like yeah, that this is where the characterization kind of fits for me. And Judy
Mm.
Greer doesn't get her flowers too often, but she kind of has a good moment in here. Uh,
Judy
I'll
Greer has
I'll
just
I'll
become
say
the
that.
mom, which sucks.
Isn't that the sort of the sad reality of being a woman in Hollywood? Like when you hit like 35, now you are the mom. And then you know what? That's just then all you're on the road to Nan territory.
I
You
think
know?
I think she's just been a mom for so long at this point. Like I'm trying to think, she's 50 years old. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah. She was like the
Oh,
mom in like what's the bling ring,
the Halloween as well.
Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, but again, very good actress, and yeah, she does know how to cry very effectively. It was funny reading some of the interviews with like cast and crew about this film and hearing her talk. Like you'd expect that she was in like half of the movie. It's
No,
like,
it's
yeah,
like
we had to
5 minutes of
build the
screen time. That's all we
chemistry. We
got.
were talking, building the dynamic and make it feel natural. It's like I just have to ugly cry. I
No,
mean, bless her though.
it's in her
Yeah.
contract for the $100,000 she got. That's exactly what she needs to do. Mark Hamill has a good few moments. He really kind of you can see that if there's a person in this movie who has a shit ton of fun, it's Mark Hamill.
He's not walking. Of course, he's having fun.
Of course, he's not working. He's just like Douglas MacArthur. He goes like, I have returned." You know, his
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
aviator glasses. He gives us the speech at the beginning. It's just yeah.
The
That speech
speech.
at the beginning is also kind of like you can see how he must have really rehearsed just to get close to Trump in moments, but without necessarily having people go like he's doing Trump.
Yeah, yeah.
You
It's not.
know,
It's not farcical. It's not farcical.
he's not
Yeah.
like
Okay.
it's a
It's not Mark
great
Ruffalo.
walk.
It's not
It's
Mark
a long
Ruffalo.
walk. The longest. I've walked a lot myself. I could do it myself. I could win this actually. You know,
I can see that. I can see that. I can definitely see that. Oh my god. Yeah.
I
Um.
could believe Donald Trump would think he would win this.
Yeah. For me, I both really liked the Charlie horse scene, the
Yep.
first kill in the film, because that's also when it cuts to the title. That's one of those things that I can see. I feel it was
Like it's
very
almost like they
effective.
forgot the title. It's like shit. We have to put it somewhere.
Which I like. I like a
We
delayed
have 15
titles
minutes in, right?
card, at least. And I had someone like next to me, and that's what I like about going to the cinema, in like a more hard house one, because I could tell some people in the audience didn't really know what the movie was going to be about,
Hmm.
because that's when you felt the energy shift in the room with some of them. But they were having maybe a bit too much fun with the banter at first, and then when you get that headshot, very graphic headshot, and then the
Oh,
long
that
walk just appears, like fuck. Oh, oh, it's gonna be that type of film. Oh, okay. It's the type of movie you watch once and never again, because why would you want to watch this again? Whether you love it or not, it's just so dark. Why would you want to
even
rewatch?
the phrase "buy a ticket," that's a specific Vietnam analogy. Buy your ticket home.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like what was it like? I can't remember what film was it like, The Lone Survivor or something like this. People were talking about dying was like buying a farm. Oh, he bought it. You
I
know,
think
he bought a
it is
farm.
terminology you hear often.
You hear this sort of quite often that the people in the military setting would have like a stand-in phrase for dying. It's like bought a ticket, you know,
Mm.
which again like makes it more difficult for me to kind of just like map it onto my own experience because I'm not going to war, hopefully. You know,
Tune in back in 1 year time when Europe has been invaded once again.
by whatever is left of the Russian army.
Exactly. Dark times, dark times. But in those dark times, we try to amuse ourselves and keep each other company, which is why I'm very glad to have had you today to talk about the long walk with me, Jakub. Of course, listeners can find you somewhere else. Where can they find you online if they want to keep reading you and listening to you?
So if you want to read what I have to say about film and culture and whatnot, you can join the thriving community of 7 people. And listen and read my stuff on flashonfilm.com. That's FLASZ onfilm.com, and that's where I write my stuff, my reviews, my review adjacent sort of essays and like weird stuff. Like I'm still like, hopefully maybe by the time you're listening to this, maybe I'll finish conceptualizing my essay that I'm just thinking about the how the introduction of a colon into the what what the introduction of a colon into the title has done to movies. That's the kind of things I think about when no one's looking. So that's what I do when I write, and I write kind of sort of exclusively there now. I just completely just gave up on like trying to pitch to places. I don't care because I get to be my own editor, and I live in the world of first drafts. So um and I also podcast with Randy, and like for those out there like who remember back in the day, we've podcasted together with Nicolo on Uncut Gems podcast. So now you're an alumnus of
The
the
good old
show.
days when I was working part-time in a
Yeah, now
museum.
it's just like life gets too busy, so and we have a brutal schedule. um, but yeah, that's kind of where I also talk about film. We talk about movies that like they're kind of sort of like a little bit lesser sort of talked about. The show is called Uncut Gems Podcast, and at Uncut Gems Pod everywhere on social media, uncutgemspodcast.com and patreon.com/uncutgemspod is where you can find and listen to our stuff. We've got plenty of things for you to listen to. So if you want to read what I have to say, flashonfilm.com. If you want to listen to me more, God bless you. you know, that's Uncut Gems podcast. Yeah, so that's where I can be found, more or less, I suppose. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I think that's it.
I don't think so, and if you did, all the links will be in the show notes below, so be sure to check them out. Meanwhile, you can follow me on pretty much everything at NikkiGra97, and you can listen and keep in touch to this podcast through Instagram at Anatomy of Adaptation Pod. Stay tuned because in 2 weeks' time, we will be back talking about Psycho, the Robert Bloch novel, and the Alfred Hitchcock classic masterpiece. We hope you have a lovely day, and we hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.